Today's topic was almost ruined. Hi, Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here. And if you've been following the recent TABLEscraps series, you know that I take my webcam and I live stream a Q&A with the audience, and I also capture that conversation with my camera and microphone to make a nice, higher res, higher quality version of it that I post afterwards. Except for this time, where after I finished the episode, I realized that I had failed to turn either of these two devices on and didn't capture a bloody thing. Fortunately, everything wasn't lost because YouTube did manage to still capture the footage through my webcams. And so, here is the salvaged 31st episode of TABLEscraps. I apologize for the low quality audio and video, but still, I hope you enjoy. Today's topic: rank stank. Welcome to TABLEscraps, short discussions about board, card, and tabletop gaming, submitted by the viewing audience and discussed with the viewing audience. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another episode of TABLEscraps, the show where I, your host, Chaz Marler, discuss a topic in real time with the live streaming YouTube audience about board games, card games, and tabletop gamings. And as always, this episode's topic was submitted to us by a viewer. This time from viewer JC, who asks the following in-depth question. My question is ranking board games unhelpful for gamers? For instance, to rate a game on a scale of 1 to 10 seems silly to me, because a game can never be rated a 10. If it were, it would be a perfect game, which of course would be impossible, since a perfect game would have to have an infinite replayability and appeal to all gamers of all types at all times. And if a ranked 10 game did exist, it'd be the only game I would ever play. Why would I want to play an imperfect game when I can play a perfect one? Ooh, but there's more. Or suppose I have a collection of games that I rate a third of them a 7, and a third of them an 8, and a third of them a 9. Why would I ever want to play a game that's only a 7 when I could play one of my games that's a 9? Similarly, if I have 100 games and I range them in a top 100 format, why would I ever care about playing any of the games in my ranges 100 to 90 when I could be playing the games in my top 10 instead? To rank games in this fashion seems strange. I found when I tried to do this with my own collection, it cheapened my experience with some of my lower ranked games, and I ultimately abandoned this method for the sake of my own enjoyment of my games. Wouldn't it be more helpful to simply rank games by type or mood? For example, Star Wars Rebellion for when it's just me and my wife, we have lots of time, and I want a strategic challenge. Suro, on the other hand, is a game I want to play when I want something fast and light, and it doesn't require a lot of brain power. Spyfall is a game for a light-hearted party/social environment. Resistance is for when my buddies and I want a cutthroat stab each other in the back experience. But if I rate Suro a 7 and Rebellion a 9, why would I ever play Suro again? To me, it seems that categorizing games is far more useful than ranking them. All that being said, while I don't personally rank my own collection, I thoroughly enjoy watching other individuals make top 100 games and all-time videos. Sorry for the long ranty post, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Speaking of thoughts, thank you for all your thoughts, JC. Fortunately, we're out of time, so we'll wrap up this episode. Oh, I'm just kidding. Whew! Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. And I don't want to monopolize the discussion by trying to unpack it all. I want to make sure that the chat gets a chance to discuss this as well. So I've written down just a couple of quick thoughts on this, and then we'll jump into the chat's thoughts. First of all, the pro of your comment. The part of your comment that I agree with is the problem with rankings is that they are completely objective. What one person sees as a 6, another person may see as an 8. So to me, I think the usefulness of rankings is to use them as more of an overall general consensus of a game's quality. And I think the trick to ranking games is to take each one and rank it how you would like it in that given scenario where you would like to play it best. I don't think it's any more possible to create the perfect game than it is to create the perfect movie, for example. Each movie, there's a different group of people you'd want to watch it with, or a different mood or experience that you'd want to have while you're watching it. And games are a similar thing. They are a narrative experience, kind of like a movie. So just where you can't have a perfect movie, you can't have a perfect game. So I think that you're on the right track there to kind of unlocking the potential problem. Keeping in mind the different scenarios, the best case scenario for each game to be played in for you, and then ranking it accordingly for that scenario might be more of the way to go. When it comes to ranking games, to me, that's always something that I keep in mind when I rank games. So hopefully that helps, but probably not. Let's go over to the YouTube chat to get some other people involved who will hopefully have some additional helpful questions, comments, and suggestions. Let's start off with a comment from Sasha, who says, ranking does not influence my decision to buy. I need info on rules, components, and gameplay to find out if the game is for me. Ranking raises interest, but only tells me how much you like the game. And I think that is absolutely something to keep in mind. Rankings are completely subjective. The influence on whether to buy, also coming from the rules and gameplay examples, is much more helpful than an arbitrary number. I got more on that, but we'll come back to it in just a minute. Let's continue on, though, with a comment from Keenan, who says, ranking is great. I've discovered games because I was searching for the best games within a mechanic or theme. My gamer friends prefer certain mechanics, while my non-gamer friends prefer a theme. Oh, well, there's something I had not even thought of yet, Keenan. So that's a really, really good example there. I'm assuming then that like top 10 lists that are very prevalent, on board game media sites and things like that can be really, really helpful. In that regard. I'm wondering if instructional videos and stuff then are as helpful to you as like a top 10 video would be. So either later in the chat or in the comments if I miss it, let me know, because I'm very interested, because where you have used rankings to actually find new games, I'm wondering if additional types of content and media have also been helpful, or if it's always only just the rankings when you're looking for games. Ethan says, even if a game is a perfect 10 for me and one I'll always play, it doesn't mean that others want to play it with me. So I'd then go to my next favorite. There you go. Ethan makes a very good point, especially with board gaming. One variable in the equation is always going to be the other people you're playing with. So that is definitely, even if you have a perfect 10 game, you are going to have to take the other people into consideration, and that definitely makes sense for why you would maybe play a game that is not your number 10 game. So thank you, Ethan. Excellent example. Fiscus joins us once again to add to the discussion that I do rank the games that I've played. My preferred method is by comparison. From a pool of games, I pick 2 and then compare, and then pick another and compare it to the ones I already ranked, and so on. That is a very interesting way of ranking it. There's a ranking method called the bubble method, I believe, where you kind of start off, you have a big pile of things to compare, and you start off with 2, choose which do I like better, then you add another one, and you say, where does it go inside the comparison of the 2, then you'll add another one, and say, where does it fit in this list, and so on and so forth, till you've ranked everything by comparing it to each other. So I don't know if that is called the bubble mechanism or another method, but if it is, let me know. If it's not, please clarify, because I do think it is a method that is helpful when you're trying to get through a big list of games and you don't know where to start. So Kabuki Kid mentions, saying you only want to play games that you rank at 10 is like saying that you only want to eat steak for every meal. Changing up games depends on what you and your group's taste buds crave at that moment. Absolutely wonderful point there. I definitely agree that even if you had a perfect 10 game, you could get tired of it after a while. I don't think that the human psyche is capable of having a perfect 10 anything that it only wants to enjoy that perfect 10 media or food or movie, game, story, what have you. Absolutely agree. If The Matrix taught us nothing else, and it didn't, it's that human beings, when given a utopian experience, will rebel. All right, let's continue on with Steve, who says, I think the biggest drawback for ranking games is that people tend to view anything below 8 as a bad game that no one should play. That is a very good point. I know when I'm surfing through BGG looking for new games to talk about and try out and play, if it's 7 or below, I start to get skeptical about it. And I know there are some of my games that I have in my collection that I really enjoy that are like a 6.x on BGG. So I know it's not something that you can rely on. I know it, but it still happens. So Steve, absolutely agree. In fact, that brings me to another note that I wanted to talk about is a scale of 1 to 10 really the best scale for rankings? I mean, there's so many other ways, and I want to know what other people's favorite methods of rankings are. I mean, there's a scale of 1 to 5, hate, okay, normal, like, love. There's that kind of rating scale. There's a scale of 1 to 3. Crits Happen, the YouTube channel, would use that one. They would have like, hit, miss, and crit. Or there's always just, play it, buy it, skip it, stuff like that. So then there's just a scale of 1 to 2, thumbs up, thumbs down. So there's such a variety in ways things can be ranked. Is there a better method than the 1 to 10? What ranking scales do you prefer and why? That is also something I would love for people to follow up with in the comments below. Kabuki says, Rebellion is one of my perfect 10 rated games, but I don't always play it. For one, it is conditional to get it to the table. It's only 2 players and it takes a few hours. Perfect example there, even using a game that JC even used in his example of a game where it can be a perfect 10 to you, but it's still completely environmental scenario mood driven on when that game is still going to get to the table, even though it is ranked 10. Let's go on with Chuck, who says, the best advice I can give regarding BGG rankings for new gamers is to ignore them. BGG tends to skew in a variety of really odd ways. I think that is true any time that you are dealing with the internet in general. I think you're going to see some odd skewing. So keep that is definitely something to keep in mind when reviewing the rankings on BGG. Sometimes people can have an agenda, or, everybody is not us. So they're going to rank things completely differently than we would. So definitely take the rankings with a grain of salt. Sasha says, I dislike the ranking system that BGG uses. I have my own system. No 10s at the moment. 9 for me is the quote-unquote perfect game. 10 is a 9 that just gets better with time, with expansions and experience for heavy games. Well, that is a very unique and interesting way of approaching it, and I like that. I know that there's some people that rank things on BGG very strangely too. They'll take their collection and they'll say, 1% of my collection is going to be 10s and 1% is going to be 1s. And then the range of games between there is going to, branch out and go in the middle. And it just seems to me so arbitrary to say, I know that 1% of my collection is going to be a 10. It's like, what? It just seems completely objective. It seems completely subjective to me and not objective at all. Kabuki also adds, I always felt that the BGG top 100 or 250 or whatever list is a good place to start with. But don't just blindly buy games from it, but use it as a place to start your research. And I think that is an excellent point. Board game rankings should not be the end of your research. I believe they should be the starting place of your research. And that's also another reason why I asked the previous poster about whether they use top 10 videos or instructional videos in determining which games to get, because I think that those are both additional helpful areas of research for finding new games to be the next steps in research. So hopefully that helps. Chuck mentions the best way to find new games that you'll enjoy is to track down the top 10/50/100 lists on BGG and YouTube within categories that interest you. So there is a big vote for categorized lists, which I think is a good idea because that hones in on a specific genre or concept narrative in games and can really give you a narrower comparison, which I think might help you find the one that's the best fit for you. So I think that is an excellent piece of advice. And real quick, Kabuki does confirm that the earlier question of the example of sorting, where you start with 2 and add 1, then add 1, then add 1 to sort a big list, I was wondering if that was bubble sorting. Kabuki confirms that yes, that is the bubble sort. So there we go. The more you know. We'll wrap up here with a message from Keenan, who says, I start with the rankings, then I move to reading rules, then reviews, pricing, and availability, and somewhere within all of that, I consider how easy it would be to teach and learn. You know what I particularly like about that is that you include availability in your list, because there's often times where I will do this. I'll get excited about a game without taking availability into account, and then I'll get super excited about it, and I'll just get in my mindset, I'm going to get this game. Then I'll realize that it's like really hard to find, maybe out of print. So then I start looking on the secondary market or eBay, or start going to like international, like, other online stores that are smaller in different places, and end up investing a lot more time and money in a game than I would have otherwise if I had thought to have added availability into part of my initial research instead of tacking it on in the end. So Keenan, mentioning availability, totally a good idea there, and something that I think, at least for me, I know I need to start doing a lot more. Unfortunately, one thing that is not going to be available is more comments from the chat to this episode, because we're out of time. But if you are watching in the chat, or later on after this has been posted on the channel, you are encouraged to add to the conversation either on the Pair of Dice Paradise Facebook page or in the YouTube comments below. And while you're floating around in the comments, be sure to click the subscribe button, because what happens when you do that is that the number of subscribers to the channel goes up, which makes everyone happy. Also, what makes everyone happy is the support that viewers like you have been giving to this channel over on the Pair of Dice Paradise fundraiser page over on PodPledge. The support that it's received has been really great and really helpful and extremely appreciated, so thank you all for that. But until the next time that we get to talk about board game whatnot, I've been Chaz Marler, who, along with the live streaming YouTube chat, have been serving up some table scraps. Thanks, and I'll talk to you again soon. Excuse me. While I was flailing around making that, I managed to gouge myself in the lip and make myself bleed. The live stream version of this video gets to see some violence as I gouge myself in the face. Why does this episode taste like blood? This episode's falling apart and beating me up. This episode 31 is now officially the cursed episode. I gouge myself in the face until I start to bleed. I did not return on any of my recording equipment. Bad job, Chaz. Bad job.